Meaning of deer in headlights. It's just been fully revealed to me. Let me just acknowledge what a daunting task this is, especially for one who has worked really hard to operate behind the scenes most of my life. But when Megan contacted me, my reluctance was overcome by a surprising sense of urgency at the opportunity to tell this audience in particular, my Uncle Mott cousins, about the men in my life. Fair warning, my reflections today are deeply personal. My 89-year-old daddy is a Korean conflict veteran, twice widowed, and still living independently in the North Carolina county where he was born. As long as he was able, he loved to garden and gave away most of what he grew. My brother is a college graduate with double majors in business and recreation, and he holds a master's degree in human services. He is a trustee in his church. A few of you might relate to my husband, who is a card-carrying member of the NHRA, the National Hot Rod Association. He is the kind of old-school mechanic who can diagnose a car's troubles by the smell of the exhaust fumes or the sound of the engine or just by looking at the color of the spark plugs. I have been very clear since the beginning of our relationship that his first love is a naturally aspirated engine. I do hope I'm holding a close second, though. We have one beautiful, accomplished daughter and 3 wonderful sons. And now, by the miracle of grace, we have 3 glorious grandsons. The oldest is focused, a computer whiz, ambitious. He worked his own way through college and is now making his place in the world. I want to tell him he is his place in the world, but I hesitate because I know that truth might not be enough to keep him safe from others who hold a different view of the meaning of his existence. The middle one just started middle school. Have mercy. His days are spent navigating the rocky cliffs of puberty and the transition from private Christian school to public charter. He is funny, witty, really kind, observant, helpful, and he loves his younger brothers with fierce devotion. The youngest, he just rules the universe. These 3 are now my heartbeat, my breath, my food, my drink, the sun, the moon, the stars. And I know this sounds a little blasphemous coming from a Christian preacher, but I also know that if you have grandchildren, you fully understand. I have 3 glorious grandsons. And as proud as I am of each of them, I am not willing to say their names, even in this space filled with thought leaders and shot callers. Here's why. A few years back, at age 14, our youngest son was targeted by an unethical journalist who had a political vendetta against someone our family knew well. This reporter called my son's school under false pretenses and had him brought to the office to take an important phone call. The reporter then proceeded to grill my son about his association with our close family friend. He also made harassing calls to our home, asking to speak specifically to my minor child at times when he guessed I would still be at work. Under the circumstances, harassing me, I suppose, was fair game. But my child? Really? I hadn't thought about this in years until a few weeks ago when my 63-year-old brother was stopped by police for driving while black through a small town late at night. I don't know if it was the nice car he has, or the shoulder-length dreadlocks he wears, or the fact that his dreads were tied back from his face with a purple bandana. He is Omega Psi Phi. Who knows what the officer was thinking? But when I saw that police car pull out, I instinctively whipped around and followed them. By the time I caught up with them, the blue lights were indeed flashing, and they had pulled over in front of an industrial complex. I turned into the side street, turned my car to face them with the headlights still on, set my smartphone on record, and propped it in my windshield. I didn't know what the officer would do, whether I would be seen as interfering or a threat. But none of those fears could drown out the voice screaming inside my head, "This is my brother, and not on my watch." A few years ago, I would never have even thought to do such a thing. But now, you see, I have 3 grandsons. Every time one of them calls me Grandma, every time I get a big bear hug, every time I whisper their names in prayer, I'm gripped by both awe-filled love and an uneasy dread. This nagging uneasiness is the real reason I chose to tell you about the men in my life today. There is a shift taking place in our culture that gives me pause. Unfortunately, it is a move that feels all too familiar to my generation. By some hellacious miracle, the Jim Crow spirit that we thought was long dead has found a way to clone itself. Thankfully, my adult men have made it through the challenge of living in a nation that refuses to heal its most putrid wound. I had hoped that my grandsons would never have to experience that particular ugliness. But as the culture shifts, it feels like to me backward. I am shifting too. I am compelled to bear witness. I am committed to guarding those whose lives I hold dear. And I am hopeful that the next time you encounter a young brown body whose name and story you may not know, you will remember these stories about the men in my life and allow these stories to counter the narratives put forth by the prevailing winds of evil. I'm also hopeful that you will make the very personal choice, as I have today, to use your voices to make sure brown-bodied sons can live lives as full and meaningful as you imagine for your own. Or at the very least, that you'll leave them the hell alone.